Hello again. In this section, we will talk about disruption in marketing. And we will introduce a framework to dimensionalize it so we can better understand its implications on campaign effectiveness and how we measure it. Now, there's three important factors that we will consider in this framework. The first one is really around the media ecosystem. And it has to do with the media options that are available. You know, how these are changing because of consumer adoption and because of technological change, and what that means for campaign effectiveness. The second one, with the yellow bubble, is really about privacy and regulation. And this is an important one. It has become much more important in the last few years as privacy is becoming coming center stage and becoming more of a concern both for consumers and marketers. And a number of new regulations are being introduced, a number of new anti-tracking changes are also being introduced by the big media platforms. So all this is having implications in terms of the type of options that are available and how marketers are planning and executing their campaigns, and obviously how they measure it. The last one is really around marketing orientation. And this one needs a little bit more explaining because it has to do with how companies are approaching marketing growth overall, you know, and how that is changing. This is an important topic. It's a little bit more strategic, but it's an important topic to kind of put into the mix because it really has to do with how different companies that some of you may be working define success. And if you define success in a different way, you also probably going to try to measure it accordingly, right? So I think it's important to close the loop between media ecosystem, privacy and regulation, and marketing orientation, and just see how all these three factors are influencing campaign effectiveness and how we measure it, okay? So let's start with the first one, which is really about the media ecosystem. But before we kind of jump in, I'd like to kind of take a quick break and show you a couple of quick videos. Now they are related. Take a quick look at them because they really kind of tell a story about change and disruption, and I think it's very relevant to our topic here as well. Take a look at this.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop, trying to refuel and change tires. Dewmore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch. The tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stops.
Now take a look at this as well. Right? Now, clearly, a lot has changed in the Formula One world. And like I said, this is a good metaphor for the change and disruption that we're also seeing in advertising and marketing. Now, take a look at this chart. It shows where we have, where we are right now in 2022 in terms of the share of digital as part of the overall media spend. It's about 60 something percent, right? 63%. And it's projected to kind of reach about 70%, 68% by 2024. It's a huge part of media spend right now, right? Traditional is only 3 out of $10. Now, why is that important? Well, digital comes in with a new set of parameters in terms of how we plan and how we execute media, what capabilities are needed, how we organize these capabilities inside the organization, right? Inside the marketing org. So it has a number of implications, both in terms of, again, how we plan and execute, but also how we measure campaign effectiveness, right? It also kind of creates new expectations in terms of how targeting works and what is feasible and what is possible, how we can customize our media and our messaging to different audiences. And in the end, it has to do with how we uh, how we think about a number of important trade-offs that we're called to do and to decide on when we plan media and when we kind of run advertising. Now, let me kind of show you a few of those things, because these are really important questions that have been kind of big debates in the advertising and marketing industry for a while. And now there's new tension because of the rise of digital. Now, the first one is really about brand versus performance orientation. And that's one of the biggest unanswered questions in marketing. It has to do with whether a brand will decide to, or a company will decide to go along and build the brand or the upper funnel, or it will decide to go short and focus on immediate conversions. The rise of digital, of course, has increased the tension in this debate. And what that means is that a lot of companies are now more likely to focus on the lower funnel, partly because of the new capabilities that digital is bringing, it's making available, right? So that's one important kind of change or implication because of the rise of digital. Another one has to do with how we plan media. You know, traditional marketing was more about building reach, and a successful campaign was oftentimes measured on its ability to just get in front of a number of people, like the largest kind of scale or reach that you would get, how many eyeballs you would get, right? Because of digital now, there is a lot more focus on targeting, right? Which has also an impact on the types of metrics that are used to measure success. You know, adding to these implications or to these specific kind of changes, you know, we can also mention, for instance, the fact that we have the explosion of new formats. You know, we have changing expectations in terms of how we tell a story in media, right? Put different, we have moved from 60 seconds to 30 seconds to 15 seconds to 6 seconds. The trend is going to continue most possibly. But again, I mean, there's different kind of expectations in terms of how we tell a story and potentially what is feasible and how we define success. Another one would be, you know, the rise of, new optimization capabilities that have become available. Like, for instance, dynamic creative optimization, which, will certainly continue to increase in importance. And especially, it's going to probably, become even more, more dynamic with the introduction of AI, right? So you see, 4 important changes, implications of the rise of digital, right? Again, what all these things mean is that as digital becomes more dominant, a lot of things are changing. How we plan, how we execute media, how we define success, how we measure it. So digital is dominating the media ecosystem. Now let's unpack that a little bit more, and let's talk about specific parts of digital that are growing and they're rising faster, right? The most recent one probably is CTV. And there's so much change happening here that some people call it the second TV revolution, right? Now, according to statistics from eMarketer, CTV ad spend will grow by 30% in 2022. As more CTV and streaming services, continue to grow, they continue to get in front of more and more people and more households, especially after the pandemic, right? Now, why is that important? Well, first, because there's a whole new set of capabilities that are being enabled by this change. Now, CTV brings the promise and the combination both of the big screen of TV, but at the same time with digital capabilities, digital targeting, digital optimization capabilities. So it brings the promise of the best of both worlds. It also has kind of a whole set of new creative capabilities that are being kind of developed. Like, for instance, introduction of QR codes that attempt to, activate kind of activate the call to action and kind of close the loop with conversion. And they give us kind of a new benefit in terms of like how we track effectiveness, right? By closing the loop. And finally, because CTV is digital at the core, it also brings the promise of digital type measurement. And what that means is that, you can have ad exposure data, right, in terms of like specific households that were exposed to an ad at the individual level, at the household level. And that can be included in multi-touch attribution models and be connected to sales at the household level. So this is all good stuff. But of course, at the same time, there are also some challenges that marketers need to kind of overcome. Now, let me talk about some of them. Those of you who will be measuring CTV campaigns will need to deal with problems like translating household to individuals, like connecting household exposure data to individuals and understanding who in the household was watching, and given that these devices are shared in the household. There are also issues with fragmentation and lack of standardization that exists across platforms, right? As well as issues with measures and duplicated reads, frequency capping, accounting for fraud, which is also kind of an issue, unfortunately, in CTV. And there's a lot more challenges as well. So in a nutshell, CTV brings a great promise and it's growing fast, but there are also many challenges both from a campaign effectiveness measurement and attribution point of view.